Hey team, I'm Oli from Briar's Atlas and Strange Atlas. Today I'm going to be running through the incredible animation engine that's inside the Flothemes Flex block. How we're going to use it is we're going to animate this small, simple lead generating landing page that I've built. And what I really want to focus on is how we use animation in a delicate, subtle way to support and amplify the content that's already there, rather than taking over the user experience. Something we're seeing as website platforms change and we have the ability to add animations is we're seeing a lot of websites where there's just stuff flying around from left to right, north to south, with no consideration for the user experience. Again, animation should support what's already there and just add this feeling of luxury and style without taking away from that user experience. Basically what I want to do is I want this giant, loud, distinct typeface to come in gently, and then for the rest of the value proposition to load in sequentially, one after the other, so that it feels like there's something of a tiny journey that the user is going on, and that it feels like, and that it gives them a compulsion to scroll down. And how we're going to do that is we're going to introduce delays between animations so that things load sequentially. And then once we're past this main bit of information here, we're going to add a little bit of quirk and bring in these things using some of the new animation techniques that have been introduced to the latest update of FlexBlock. So let's get started. What I want to do first of all is basically have this title fading in gently. I don't want it to be flying in from left to right. I just want it to slowly be introduced to the page. And for that to happen quick enough that the user knows what's going on and knows... Click means when we click on the element, whatever the animation is activated. And as you can imagine, hover means when we hover over that element, that animation is activated. What we're going to use for this is appear, because we want that animation to be triggered straight away once the browser window is loaded. So what I want to do first is I want this title element to just simply fade in. So I've selected the fade in, aptly named, and I've set the duration to 1 second. A great idea is to preview all of your animations as you go so you can see how they're sequentially loading onto the page. That's good enough for that. But I don't want the user to be distracted by all of these other elements until they've been able to process the title of 52 Strange Invitations. So I'm going to have all of these other elements set to fade in the same way. But how I'm going to make that happen is I want to set the delay time to 0.4 seconds. That means they won't begin to load until 0.4 seconds has passed since they've been active on the stage. So what we'll do is we'll hit save, and then we'll preview where we're at on the live site. Also, don't do this at home. Don't test stuff on your live site. Who knows what could happen. So as we can see, the title's fading in first and then everything else is coming in. But for me, it's coming in a little bit too early still, so I'm going to increase the delay to 0.7 seconds. So now all of these elements will begin to fade in and be visible from 0.7 seconds. Now, I'm going to assume that that's a fairly good delay time, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue on building the rest. So we're going to have this element here. Now this is my intake form for MailChimp. Now that's a coding block inside FlexBlock. And something brilliant about FlexBlock is even if you're using a coding block or a video block, all of these elements can be brought in using the animation engine. So it doesn't matter what you've got loading inside this code block. that can be affected by the animations that you set here, which is fantastic. So I'm setting that to 0.7 as well. And let's set the duration of all of these to 0.7, just so there is some cohesion between them all. Great, so now this first element will fade in, and now all of these will come in. Now we get to this nifty little part. Now, a context where you might use a tick and line device, if you're a wedding photographer, for example, might be if you're displaying all of your packages in a row on the website. And under each of them, you might have the value propositions or the pricing, things like how many images they get or how long you stay for. And that's a really useful place that you can use this tick line device. And a way that you want to think about animation as you're building out your animations in FlexBlock is, what are the things on the stage saying? And often that's going to inform the type of animation that you select and the way that you use that. Using this as an example, if we tick on a sheet of paper and then write the line out, they happen sequentially. So first we're going to see the tick, then we're going to see the line. And then we're going to kick over to the next line and the same thing's going to happen. So using animation, we can think about it in that way and then make sure we're animating it and honoring how that should actually feel. So what we're going to do is we're going to set all of these to fade in. Great, now they're all set to fade in. Let's test on the live site. But first what I want to do is I want to make sure all of my delays are set up correctly. So if we think about how this page is building, we've got the title fading in first, and then we have all of this second tier information. We want these to come in last so that the user understands the order in which they should be reading or navigating the page. So over here we've got a delay of 0.7 seconds on these. Now if we want these to come in afterwards, it means we need to set a delay time that begins at 0.7 seconds or later. So what we're going to do is we're going to start this at 1 second, so it's nice and clean, and then clearly begins after these are loaded in. So we'll have the tick coming at 1 second. We'll have the tick item coming at 1.1. And because we want this next line to start clearly after the first line's finished, what we're going to do is we're going to put a slightly longer delay between each line. We're going to use 0.2 instead of 0.1, which is what separates the tick from its own line. Which means if this delay here is 1.1, we want this one here to start at 1.3. And then its line will start at 1.4. And then the next line will start at 1.6. And so on and so forth. And this will be 1.7. The next line will start at 1.9 because we're skipping 2. And then by this point we're up to 2 seconds. And the last line will begin at 2.2 seconds. Great, now let's go and preview the first half of this page once the Australian internet has caught up with. There we go. Okay. Perfect. So we have our title coming in, our second tier information coming in, and then this checkbox. It feels nice, it's simple, it's not overwhelming. But the problem we're left with now is that this written and published by my big stupid headline is visible before the rest is loaded. So what we want to do is we want to put a delay on that line. Now the last element here starts at 2.3, so let's get that starting at 2.5. Now in the internet's world, 2.5 seconds is quite a long time. So that's about as long as we really want to be faffing around with having elements being loaded in. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get to this second section down here, which is kind of a bonus round. And I want to show you this nifty new little animation that was released in the last Flex block, as well as covering off how we get two large graphical elements to kind of relate to each other and come in an interesting way. In this case, I'm kind of going to reference Tetris. So I want these slotting in and locking into each other. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this title, and we're going to try the new slide up with rotation animation. Now, what I am going to do is have this set to scroll, which means that this only appears, and these will only appear, when the user has scrolled down to that region. Now with this you can set a rotation. My favorite number range for this is anywhere between 5 and 20. You can see that we've used 6 right now, and it's just enough to be subtle. The moment we dial it up to say 80, it's doing some pretty wacky stuff. And if you're going to do wacky stuff in animation, the rule is it should be speaking to the design or the way that the element lives and exists on the page. In this case, it's just text, so it makes no sense to use really wacky spinning type animations. Back to the first rule of thumb, keep it simple, keep it classy. Now with these, because we want this sort of almost Tetris-like locking in device, I'm going to have a slide in from left for that one, and then I'm going to have a slide up on the right one. Now I've got these both set to scroll, and instead of the flat easing line, I'm going to use one of these ones here, which has more of a bouncy effect to it. And these easing options are really, really great because you can have any of these animations up here take on such a different life just by the easing type that you use. So that's quite linear, it's flat, it's a little bit dull in this context, it's great in other contexts. So I want to use something with a bit of bounce and personality to it. The next one along is a simple ease in and ease out, but the third one along goes past the point of no return and then returns back past the point of no return. And the final one is sort of an extreme smooth bounce. But for these, I just want to have a simple, bouncy, soft landing. Now, the one interesting part with this is I want all of these elements to come in as soon as the user is scrolling there. So I'm going to set the start point of this title text to 0, which means as soon as this text is visible on the web page, this animation will begin triggering, because I don't want there to be this giant gap of negative space where the user kind of wonders if the page is broken or something. I want it to all start happening as soon as it can. With that said, I want this to come in first, and then I want these to come in sequentially. So I want the left one to come in this way first, and for this to tag along for the right about halfway through. How we do that is we adjust the start and the finish points for our animation. So I've got this one on the left starting at 0, which means as soon as the user gets to that part of the screen, this animation here will begin. And with the one on the right, I just want to adjust the figures and knock them back by 5. So this one starts at 0, finishes at 50, and the one on the right starts at 5 and finishes at 55. In this way, they'll kind of bounce in sequentially, and it'll have that movement and almost musical life to it that you can build by staggering your flex theme animations. So let's check out what that looks like. Ooh la la, great. Now we scroll down, and there we go. It's subtle, it's classy, it's not overbearing, and most importantly, it doesn't take away from the content that's there. And that's the number one thing to think about when you're working animations into your flex themes. Thanks for watching. I'm Ollie from Briar's Atlas and A Strange Atlas. And enjoy the Flothemes animation engine.